Have you ever wondered if there's more to Jesus Christ than what you've been taught all your life? What if everything you believe about spiritual power and divine presence has been limited by centuries of religious tradition? Now, imagine for a moment that the Jesus you learned about in Sunday school wasn't just a historical figure to be worshipped from a distance, but actually the blueprint for your own spiritual awakening. What would change in your life if you discovered that the Christ wasn't merely a person who lived 2,000 years ago, but a living presence available to you right now, in this very moment? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. This is exactly what mystical teacher Joel Goldsmith uncovered after decades of spiritual exploration and practice. His revolutionary understanding shattered conventional religious boundaries and opened a doorway to experiencing divine power in everyday life. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when a new understanding suddenly makes everything you thought you knew appear in an entirely different light. Stay with me until the end, because what Goldsmith discovered about Jesus and the Christ principle might transform not just your spiritual understanding, but your entire experience of life itself. He found that Jesus of Nazareth was not some supernatural being beyond our comprehension, but rather a man who achieved something extraordinary. He became so filled with Christ consciousness that his human personality dissolved into pure spiritual being. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Those miraculous healings, the walking on water, the feeding of thousands, these weren't performed through Jesus' personal power or special divine favor. They happened because Jesus recognized his complete oneness with the infinite source. Remember when Jesus said, "I can of mine own self do nothing"? He wasn't being modest. He was revealing the profound secret of his spiritual mastery. The human Jesus became transparent to the Christ presence flowing through him. He didn't heal people through some magical ability that only he possessed. Instead, he recognized the spiritual perfection that was already present within every person who came seeking help. And here's the truly revolutionary part. Goldsmith teaches that this same Christ presence exists within you right now. It's not something you develop through years of spiritual practice or earn through good behavior. It's your fundamental spiritual identity that remains perfect and whole, regardless of what appears to be happening in your human experience. Jesus simply demonstrated what becomes possible when we stop identifying with human limitation and recognize our divine nature. What if the struggles you're facing right now, whether physical, emotional, financial, or relational, could be transformed through this same recognition? What if the power that healed the blind, made the lame walk, and even conquered death is actually your birthright as a spiritual being? If you're resonating with these teachings on Christ consciousness, hit subscribe to join our spiritual community and continue exploring these transformative principles together. The implications of this understanding go far beyond religious belief or theological concepts. They touch the very core of how you experience daily life, your relationships, your health, and even your sense of purpose in this world. Think about it. What Goldsmith reveals is that the same Christ presence that expressed itself through Jesus exists within you right now. This isn't some mystical theory or theological abstraction. It's a practical revelation about your true identity. The journey to discovering this hidden truth within yourself doesn't require special qualifications or years of religious devotion. It's your fundamental spiritual identity that remains perfect regardless of human circumstances. This understanding creates a profound mindset shift in how we approach our challenges. When you're facing illness, relationship conflicts, or financial struggles, you're not a broken human being pleading with a distant deity for help. You're a perfect spiritual expression temporarily, forgetting your divine nature. The transformation happens in that moment of recognition, when you remember who you truly are. Most of us have been conditioned to pray as if we're sending requests to an external God, hoping our messages reach some divine inbox. We ask Jesus or God to intervene in our lives, to fix our problems, to heal our bodies. But what if prayer was never meant to be about getting God's attention? What if the entire paradigm of prayer as petition is missing the mark? When you understand that Christ lives as your true being, prayer undergoes a radical metamorphosis. It becomes a moment of recognition rather than request. You're not trying to convince God to help you. You're awakening to the divine presence that has never been absent from your experience. This is the profound insight that revolutionizes spiritual practice. Imagine the impact this could have on your daily experience. Instead of starting your day with worried thoughts and anxiety about what might go wrong, you begin with the quiet recognition of your spiritual identity. Problems that seemed insurmountable suddenly reveal themselves as opportunities for Christ consciousness to demonstrate its infinite power through you. This isn't positive thinking or psychological technique. It's a fundamental realignment with what has always been true about you. The reason this approach creates such dramatic shifts in people's lives is that it's not about adding something new to your experience. It's about removing the veils of misunderstanding that have obscured your spiritual vision. I've witnessed people with chronic health conditions that didn't respond to medical treatment experience complete healing when they caught even a glimpse of this truth. I've seen decades-long family conflicts dissolve when just one person in the situation recognized the Christ presence in themselves and others. The revelations that emerge from this understanding don't just change your spiritual beliefs. They transform your entire journey through this world. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this recognition shifts your identity from human to spiritual being, and how that shift creates space for genuine healing to occur. If something in this message resonates with your inner knowing, write, "I recognize the Christ within," in the comments below. When you fully grasp that you are not a limited human having occasional spiritual moments, but rather a spiritual being having a temporary human experience, everything changes. This profound identity shift isn't just a conceptual understanding. It's a complete revolution in consciousness that transforms how you navigate every aspect of life. When this truth deeply penetrates your awareness, you begin to see yourself differently. The human persona you've identified with for decades, with all its history, limitations, and struggles, is recognized as just the outer expression of something far more profound. Behind the scenes of your human life exists a perfect spiritual identity that has never been damaged, limited, or separate from divine wholeness. This revelation creates a dramatic mindset shift. Every challenge that appears in your life is no longer a problem to be solved or endured. It becomes an invitation, a sacred opportunity to demonstrate the Christ presence that is your true nature. The difficult colleague at work, the unexpected financial setback, the chronic health condition, all transform from burdensome problems into opportunities for spiritual awakening. Goldsmith witnessed the incredible healing power of this recognition throughout his decades of spiritual work. His practice produced thousands of transformative healings when people caught even a glimpse of their true spiritual identity. These weren't minor improvements or temporary relief. They were profound shifts that completely altered people's life trajectories. What makes these healings so remarkable is that they didn't occur through human effort, willpower, or even traditional prayer. They happened through the simple yet profound recognition of spiritual truth. When someone's consciousness opened to recognize their divine nature, diseases that had resisted years of medical treatment suddenly disappeared. Relationships that seemed irreparably broken experienced complete reconciliation. Financial situations that looked hopeless transformed into abundance. This isn't positive thinking or psychological technique. It's something far more fundamental. When you glimpse your spiritual identity, you're not creating a new reality through mental effort. You're simply aligning with what has always been true behind the appearance of human limitation. The journey to this recognition doesn't require years of arduous spiritual practice. It can happen in an instant when you're ready to let go of your investment in seeing yourself as limited. The most compelling evidence for this approach is in the transformations it creates. I've witnessed people who struggled with chronic pain for decades experience complete relief when they recognize themselves as spiritual beings rather than physical bodies with problems. I've seen businesses on the brink of bankruptcy suddenly receive unexpected opportunities when their owners shifted from fear-based scrambling to recognition of divine intelligence operating through their work. Subscribe to this channel if you want to dive deeper into practical spiritual wisdom that can transform your everyday experience from limitation to limitless possibility. These revelations aren't abstract or theoretical. They create tangible results in everyday life. The shift happens when you stop seeing yourself as a human struggling to become more spiritual and instead recognize yourself as inherently spiritual, temporarily expressing through human form. This understanding doesn't just change your beliefs, it transforms your entire experience. If you've experienced moments where you sensed your spiritual identity beyond your human story, type "I am spirit" in the comments below. Let's explore how this understanding played out in real people's lives and the specific practices that help them maintain this spiritual recognition even during difficult circumstances. One of the most profound revelations I've witnessed in Goldsmith's work is how this understanding transforms even the most entrenched human problems, situations that seemed completely hopeless through conventional approaches. Consider the breakthrough experience of a woman who came to Goldsmith's classes carrying decades of bitter resentment toward her ex-husband. This wasn't just a minor grievance. It was a deep wound that had poisoned her emotional landscape for 15 years. She had tried everything the human mind could conceive to heal this pain: intensive therapy, forgiveness exercises, meditation retreats, even medication for the depression that had developed alongside her resentment. Nothing worked. Then she encountered this profound truth about Christ consciousness, and something fundamental shifted in her perception. She realized that holding on to anger wasn't just hurting her emotionally, it was actively denying the Christ presence in both herself and her former spouse. This wasn't about pretending the hurt hadn't happened or excusing harmful behavior. It was about recognizing a spiritual reality deeper than the human story. The transformation wasn't gradual, it was immediate and decisive. Within just 3 weeks of this recognition, something happened that defied all conventional expectations. Her ex-husband called unexpectedly after years of painful silence. He apologized sincerely for years of hurtful behavior and asked for her forgiveness. Even more remarkably, she found herself responding from a wellspring of genuine compassion she didn't know she possessed. This wasn't positive thinking or psychological technique at work. When she recognized Christ as her true identity, the love that had always been present beneath the human drama emerged naturally, creating space for healing that 15 years of conventional approaches couldn't achieve. This same principle applies powerfully in the material realm too. A businessman facing imminent bankruptcy attended one of Goldsmith's retreats as a final, desperate measure. He had exhausted every human solution: refinancing, marketing pushes, staff cuts, consultants, and was preparing to lose everything he had built over 20 years. When he heard that Christ consciousness was his true identity, something clicked into place. He experienced an inner alignment that transformed his entire approach. Instead of frantically chasing potential clients from a place of desperation and fear, he began each day by quietly acknowledging the Christ presence within himself and within every person he would encounter. This shift wasn't just spiritual theory. It completely changed how he operated in the marketplace. He stopped trying to manipulate outcomes through force of will and started trusting the divine intelligence that knew how to prosper him better than his human mind could conceive. The results defied conventional business logic. Within just 2 months, 3 major contracts appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. Companies that had never responded to his proposals suddenly reached out, wanting to work with him. If you've ever experienced an unexpected solution appear after letting go of desperate control, type divine. Timing in the comments below. What changed wasn't his strategy or market conditions, it was his consciousness. Let's examine how this principle works in even more challenging human circumstances, like addiction and family dynamics. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking human struggles is watching a loved one battle addiction. The feelings of helplessness, fear, and grief can be overwhelming, especially for parents witnessing their children's suffering. One mother's journey demonstrates the extraordinary breakthrough possible through spiritual recognition. She had watched her teenage son spiral into drug addiction and despair, despite her best efforts to help. Every conventional intervention had failed. Counselors, rehabilitation programs, tough love approaches all seemed to make the situation worse rather than better. In desperation, she turned to Goldsmith's teachings and discovered a radical new approach. She needed to stop seeing her son as an addict, a broken human being, needing to be fixed, and start recognizing the perfect Christ presence that was his true spiritual identity. This wasn't denial or enabling destructive behavior. It required holding steadfast to a spiritual truth that contradicted everything her physical eyes were showing her. The journey wasn't immediate. For 6 months, she maintained this inner recognition despite no visible evidence of change. She stopped reacting to her son's behavior from fear and started responding from the Christ consciousness within herself. The transformation that eventually occurred was profound and lasting. Her son began making different choices, sought help voluntarily, and reconnected with his family. Years later, he told her something revealing. He could feel something different in how she looked at him, something that helped him remember who he really was beneath the addiction. Her shift in consciousness created space for his own awakening to occur. This revelation points to a practical pathway for living Christ consciousness in your daily life. The key is consistency and recognition. Each morning before engaging with human problems, acknowledge the Christ presence as your true being. This doesn't require elaborate rituals or hours of meditation, just a quiet moment of remembering who you truly are. Throughout the day, when challenges arise, difficult conversations, unexpected obstacles, physical discomforts, pause and remember that you are not a limited human trying to fix problems. You are Christ consciousness expressing itself through seeming difficulties. This simple recognition shifts your entire relationship to problems. When you maintain this practice consistently, you'll notice that challenges don't necessarily disappear from your life, but your relationship to them transforms completely. You stop feeling victimized by circumstances and start experiencing yourself as a spiritual presence moving through human conditions. The inner landscape of fear, anxiety, and overwhelm gradually gives way to peace, clarity, and inspired action. This isn't a path of escaping human experience, but of bringing spiritual consciousness into every aspect of your humanity. Your relationships, work, creative expressions, and daily activities all become opportunities to demonstrate the Christ presence that is your true nature. If you're committed to remembering your true spiritual identity during daily challenges, type "I choose awareness" in the comments below. Let's explore the specific meditation techniques that Goldsmith taught to deepen this recognition. Beyond the intellectual understanding of spiritual identity lies the transformative journey of embodying this truth through consistent practice. Goldsmith's approach wasn't about complex rituals or esoteric techniques. He focused on simple yet profound practices accessible to anyone, regardless of their spiritual background. The first essential practice he called the listening ear. This represents a radical departure from conventional prayer. Most spiritual traditions teach us to talk to God, to petition, praise, or plead with a divine presence outside ourselves. But Goldsmith discovered something revolutionary. Spiritual transformation accelerates when we reverse this dynamic. Instead of constantly talking to God, the practice involves learning to be still and listen for divine guidance arising from within your own consciousness. This isn't about hearing audible words, but sensing the subtle current of wisdom that flows beneath mental chatter. Begin with just 5 minutes of complete silence each morning. Not asking for anything, not trying to solve problems, simply listening with receptive awareness. At first, you'll likely encounter the usual mental noise. Worries about the day ahead, rehashing of yesterday's events, random thoughts jumping from one subject to another. But if you persist in this practice, gradually you'll sense a deeper presence emerging from behind the mental static. This is Christ consciousness communicating with your receptive awareness. The guidance that emerges from this listening practice differs dramatically from conventional decision-making. It's always loving, always constructive, always peaceful. When you learn to consult this inner wisdom before taking action, your choices align with a higher intelligence that sees beyond your human limitations. The second transformative practice is contemplative meditation on spiritual identity. Throughout your day, especially during stressful or challenging moments, silently remind yourself, I am not a body, I am not a mind, I am not emotions, I am Christ consciousness appearing as individual being. This isn't positive affirmation or wishful thinking, it's recognition of spiritual fact. When you're stuck in traffic rather than fuming about delays, use those moments to contemplate your true identity. When facing financial pressure, instead of calculating limitations, acknowledge the infinite abundance that is your spiritual inheritance. When dealing with difficult people, look past their human behavior to the Christ presence that is their true nature beneath the facade. This practice gradually shifts your entire perspective from human reaction to spiritual response. The external circumstances haven't changed, but your relationship to them transforms completely. You stop being victimized by conditions and start demonstrating mastery through recognition of what you truly are. What makes these practices so powerful is their simplicity and accessibility. You don't need special environments, expensive retreats, or years of training. You can begin integrating them into your daily life immediately, creating small pockets of spiritual recognition throughout your day. If you've experienced moments of unexpected clarity or guidance when you became quiet within, type "Inner Wisdom Speaks" in the comments below. Let's explore how these practices create powerful healing effects when applied to specific human challenges. One of the most transformative aspects of Goldsmith's teaching involves what he called impersonal healing through Christ recognition. This approach radically shifts how we respond when someone asks for prayers or when we witness suffering in the world around us. The conventional human response is to immediately try fixing the problem, offering advice, suggesting treatments, or praying for divine intervention to change the troubling condition. But Goldsmith discovered a more powerful approach. Instead of trying to fix the human picture, silently recognize the Christ perfection that is already present within that person. This recognition isn't wishful thinking or denial of apparent difficulties. It's acknowledging a spiritual reality that exists beneath the surface of human appearance. When you hold this recognition steadily, knowing that spiritual truth is more powerful than any temporary human condition, something remarkable happens. The healing power isn't yours personally. You simply become transparent to the Christ consciousness that knows only perfection. Your role in this healing work is to get your human opinions, fears, and judgments out of the way so that divine love can express itself freely. This approach doesn't replace practical actions or medical treatment. It provides the spiritual foundation that allows human solutions to work more effectively. The most profound healings occur when we combine practical steps with this deep spiritual recognition. The beauty of this approach is that it works even when the other person isn't consciously aware of these spiritual principles. Goldsmith witnessed countless healings that occurred simply because someone held another in the light of spiritual recognition. This isn't manipulation or control. It's allowing divine love to flow through your consciousness without human interference. This same principle applies powerfully to your daily activities. Another essential practice involves carrying Christ consciousness into everything you do, transforming mundane tasks into spiritual demonstrations. Whether you're washing dishes, conducting business meetings, or caring for children, maintain awareness that Christ is expressing itself through your activities. When you drive your car, recognize that Christ consciousness is directing your journey. When you prepare meals, see Christ consciousness nourishing your family through your hands. When you work at your job, know that Christ consciousness is serving through your professional activities. This recognition elevates every aspect of life, from mere human effort to spiritual expression. This doesn't mean becoming impractical or otherworldly. In fact, your effectiveness in daily activities actually increases because you're aligned with infinite intelligence rather than limited human thinking. Decisions become clearer, relationships flow more harmoniously, and even physical energy increases when you recognize the divine source behind all action. Behind the scenes of every human activity lies infinite wisdom waiting to express through you. The most remarkable shift happens in your experience of ordinary moments. A sunset becomes a direct revelation of divine beauty. A conversation with a stranger reveals unexpected depth, and even challenges become doorways to greater spiritual awareness. If you've noticed how your daily activities transform when approached with spiritual awareness, type "divine in the ordinary" in the comments below. Now let's address the inevitable doubts and obstacles that arise on this path of spiritual recognition. Perhaps the biggest challenge people face when encountering these teachings is persistent doubt about their spiritual identity. After years, sometimes decades, of identifying with human limitations, suddenly recognizing yourself as Christ consciousness can feel impossible or even presumptuous. Goldsmith understood this resistance deeply and approached it with profound compassion and practical wisdom. He taught that doubt is not your enemy, but simply old mental habits that haven't yet caught up with spiritual truth. This insight alone relieves much of the frustration people experience when doubts arise during their spiritual journey. When you find yourself questioning whether this spiritual identity is really yours, or whether such profound transformation is actually possible in your life, don't fight against these doubts or feel guilty about having them. Simply acknowledge them as the human mind's natural response to expanding beyond familiar boundaries. Then gently return your attention to the recognition of your true spiritual nature. The key to overcoming doubt is persistence without force. Like water gradually wearing away stone, consistent recognition of Christ consciousness eventually dissolves patterns of limitation that have governed your experience. Some days the recognition feels strong and clear. Other days it seems distant and difficult to access. Both experiences are natural parts of the awakening process. Behind the scenes of this journey is a profound revelation. The very consciousness that seems to be struggling with doubt is itself an expression of the Christ presence you're recognizing. Even your doubts are held within infinite love. This understanding creates space for genuine transformation without the pressure of spiritual perfectionism. As you continue this practice of recognition through both clear and cloudy states of mind, something remarkable begins to happen. The effort required diminishes. The reminders become less necessary. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Christ consciousness becomes your natural way of being, rather than something you have to remember to practice. This is the ultimate transformation that Goldsmith witnessed in dedicated students. Spiritual recognition begins to flow automatically in challenging situations. Love emerges naturally in difficult relationships. Peace becomes your default state, rather than something you achieve through effort. This doesn't mean you never face difficulties or never feel human emotions. It means you navigate life's experiences from an unshakable foundation of spiritual identity. Problems still arise in your human experience, but they no longer threaten your fundamental sense of well-being, because you know who you truly are beneath all appearances. You become what Goldsmith called a transparency for Christ. Your personality remains uniquely yours, but it serves as a clear window through which divine love, wisdom, and power can express themselves in the world. The ripple effects of this transformation touch everyone you encounter, often in ways you never realize. People sense something different about your presence, a peace, a clarity, a compassion that transcends ordinary human interaction. You're not trying to influence others or demonstrate your spirituality. You're simply being authentically yourself from recognition of your true spiritual identity. And that authenticity naturally blesses everyone around you. If these teachings about overcoming doubt resonate with your own spiritual journey, type "Beyond Doubt" in the comments below. As we've journeyed together through these profound teachings of Joel Goldsmith, I hope you've caught even a glimpse of the Christ consciousness that is your true spiritual identity. This understanding isn't just spiritual theory. It's a practical pathway to experiencing greater peace, healing, and divine expression in your everyday life. If these teachings have resonated with something deep within you, perhaps it's because they're awakening a recognition of who you truly are beneath all human appearances. That recognition is the beginning of a profound transformation that will touch every aspect of your life. I create these videos because I believe these spiritual truths are too powerful to remain hidden in obscure mystical texts. They're meant to be lived, experienced, and shared. If you feel the same way, consider subscribing to this channel where we explore these timeless principles of spiritual awakening every week. Your engagement means everything to this community of spiritual seekers. If something in this message has touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Simply write, "I am Christ expressing," to let me know these teachings have found their home. And if you found value in our time together, giving this video a like helps others discover these transformative teachings too. It's a simple act that creates ripples of awakening beyond what we can imagine. The journey of spiritual recognition doesn't end here. There's a video right here that explores how to maintain Christ consciousness during life's greatest challenges. Click and continue with me over there as we go even deeper into practical spiritual living. Remember, you are not alone on this path of awakening to your true divine nature.